in the process of slowly killing you.
But you can't use Harvard as a legitimate source of study like this and then beforehand say that they're basically part of the machine.
No, I was talking about specifically at the key fraternities of the rich blue bloods at Harvard, at Yale, at Princeton, specifically being infiltrated and Skull and Bones being founded by British intelligence. And
but
that's
why
on
do
record.
studies, though, that absolutely... Again, if
here's the deal.
why do studies that would absolutely disprove
I can go to a cemetery and it's full of dead kids.
Well,
you average them out, I'm right.
I'm not saying there's not a lot of dead kids in cemeteries, but again, why even allow that study to be done? There's such simple things that could stop this stuff from coming out. Why allow the institution to do a study that basically
in
disproves
1961 in his farewell address, Eisenhower said, watch out for the military-industrial complex. Over 90% of funding in universities and studies is now government. And more, they are trying to adulterate studies. And you do have to watch them. Look, all I know is this. My taxes are going way up, and I can watch congressional hearings, whether it's Bush people or Obama people, and they say, where's the $500 billion? Where's the $800 billion? Where's the $2 trillion? And the head of the Fed, the head of the New York Fed, the head of the Treasury, all former Goldman Sachs people paying themselves bailout money, sit there and say, I'm not going to tell you where the $2 trillion went. Sit down and shut up. Now, I know something's wrong with that picture, and I'll expand on that. I watched Henry Paulson with Congressman Stern. This is in my film, The Obama Deception, and Congressman Stern said, from Florida, said, well, you know what? We know where $218 million went. It went to you. How did you, as the former head of Goldman Sachs, holding hundreds of millions in Goldman stock, how did you get a $218 million payment of bailout money you gave AIG that you knew was going to pay out to Goldman Sachs? And he said, I got a waiver. And Congressman Stern said, who gave you that waiver? And he said, I'll tell you who gave me that waiver. I did. Now, let me tell you, that isn't a conspiracy. That's out in the open, raping me and my family and raising all these taxes and getting rid of middle-class tax cuts. California raised a bunch of taxes. Bloomberg reports 46 states are about to go bankrupt. I have the government and banking documents where they plan to bankrupt states. They create the welfare system. Things go bankrupt. The banks come in and loan us fiat money and take over our society. And California knew 2 years ago.
Wait, what documents that says that they plan to bankrupt states?
In 2002, I'll just give you one of the big ones that the BBC got, Greg Palast. They got IMF World Bank documents that are international front consortiums for the private central banks, that their U.S. consortium front holding company is the Federal Reserve. And in those thousands of pages of documents, it's called, in fact, one headline, it became world news, was IMF World Bank documents. What was that headline? IMF World Bank documents. It'll pop in my head in just a second. IMF World Bank document story goes viral, I think was one of my headlines, and then it links over to the BBC. But the point is that in there, it's the 100-point plan, how they go in, how they buy off politicians, and they take decades to do this, how they get the politicians to take big loans from them. Then when they don't pay those loans back and they tell them not to, then they lose their credit rating. Then the loans go up even bigger. And take Nigeria, $1 billion loan, 50+ billion paid back. They still own another 50 billion on 1 billion. So they pay $100 billion plus bucks and never pay back the 1 billion.
Yeah, but they're giving me 10 million. They sent me an email saying that a doctor died and I got 10 million from Nigeria.
I got the same email. They're giving it back one citizen at a time.
Let me just tell you something, guys. Look, I please don't believe me. Please, go look it up for yourself. Research soft kill weapons. Research neo-eugenics. Research sterilants in vaccines. Just search the term UN caught adding sterilant to vaccines. You'll get mainstream news. Please search. I mean,
all right, I do. You know, instead of individual circumstances and events and things like that, let me just ask you a blanket question. Is there anything, any large events, aside from just signing a little shit bill or something like that, that the government does that you actually believe happened the way it happens? Do you believe in the moon landing? Do you believe in that the Watergate conspiracy, which was a conspiracy, was actually played out the way it was?
I actually know exactly what happened with both those cases.
All right.
Deep research. Well, first let me briefly just put it this way. Most of what happens is real, and is the way we were told, but then they'll spin it. They're like, oh, police are taking blood at warrantless checkpoints under federal grants in Texas. Isn't it good? And I take that article and I go, no, this is total thuggery, the end of the Fourth Amendment. Can you imagine in Nazi Germany if they were taking blood at checkpoints? I mean, what have we turned into? So most of the time, it's just out in the open what they're doing.
I could imagine.
Wait, taking the blood? Oh, I'm not sure what you mean. I'm sorry, buddy. Taking the blood? What do you mean?
Okay, well, I mean, now under federal grants all over the country, they're setting up random checkpoints, and police are now taking blood. And I found out about this 6 years ago and got the government documents by searching. Anything you can imagine the government's doing.
Where are they taking? I've never heard of it. I'm not saying you're wrong. I've never heard of it. Where do they take blood?
Well, let me tell you. Not only was I telling people about them taking blood at warrantless checkpoints before it was news, because I got reports of it, now it's mainstream news in Texas, New York, California.
Wait, like there'd be a Dewey checkpoint type of checkpoint?
You pull up at a checkpoint.
Right.
And they got an RV, and the cops take your blood.
I have never heard of that.
Never heard of that.
Let me expand on that. 15 years ago, a nurse in San Antonio at a Pentagon database who works for University of Texas sent me secret documents saying that all babies since 1972 in a worldwide program under the UN have their blood taken, and it's stored in the U.S. and Pentagon and university databases for bioweapons. And guess what? I talked about it for 15 years, and now it's CNN, AP saying, yeah, we got your baby's blood. It was taken secretly, and yeah, the Pentagon's got it, and yeah, CBS News, the government says they now own your DNA, and your DNA, and they've got computer systems that can track your entire genome in 2 minutes individually. But briefly.
So why aren't they using that? Like they're going through all this stuff to take blood from criminals. For rape cases and DNA stuff where and in times actually frees people.
That's the public operation. They're getting you used to it now being harvested like in England at a traffic stop. We haven't gotten to that phase yet except for the, quote, DWI blood points, but that's actually 4 databases. They've been covertly doing it. Okay, Australia 6 years ago went into an earlier phase than us. And they went ahead and announced, guess what? We took everybody's blood at birth, part of a UN program, and now we're going to use it to solve old murders.
So what group decided to do this? Is what I mean. Like, was Australia's doing it? The U.S. No one has heard. No one in my experience has heard of that.
We have a global government.
So they all get together, and none of them have the blabbermouth syndrome. None of them they're all these perfect working humans who don't make mistakes. They don't make judgment errors.
The nurse gave me this 15 years ago, and I covered it and got death threats over it. And
why not just kill you? Why give you death threats? I mean, it doesn't make sense. Why would they
if they kill me, it makes me a martyr, and it underlines and highlights and puts an exclamation point behind what I said. But
they made JFK a martyr. Apparently, if they did JFK a martyr, Malcolm X, they made a martyr.
Because he actually had power and was threatening him.
Well, so are you. If you're giving out, Alex, honestly,
I am getting
if you're giving out real information.
Let me tell you about the moon landing, and what was the other one?
Yeah, I want to hear about the moon landing.
Me too.
Yeah.
But it was moon landing, and what was the other one?
Watergate.
Okay. Moon landing. I actually have done deep research on this, and because I've been researching this stuff for 20 years, on air for 15, and I went out, and I would never give people my opinion until about the last 2 years. And that's because a lot of these guys are old and have heart trouble. And Raymond Teague, who on record was part of the frontline Apollo missions and also assigned to RCA and ran the moon cameras and the Skylab cameras. Raymond Teague, engineer. He's a electrical engineer. Before that, he was in Air Force intelligence. And he's had like 8 heart attacks. He's got a whole bunch of stents. And he came to my office, and I've been friends with him for years. He's one of my dad's patients, dental patients. And he said, look, I may die anytime. He's still alive. This is actually 2 years ago. But he said, I almost died last week. And he said, I'm going to go ahead and tell you. And then by the time I got him on air, he wouldn't say it all. But I've said it all for my safety. And he was shaking. When these guys break national security parameters, they start shaking. And it's just amazing.
But, Alex, why on your show? Not to disrespect you, but why?
Yeah, I want to know.
Why on your show?
Go.
Now, Raymond Teague, and you can see him in photos. In fact, I showed this on my TV show / radio show. You can just Google Alex Jones, Raymond Teague, and photos of him on the front line. He wasn't the second or third backup unit because they had whole ground crews. He was on the front crew for Apollo and Skylab running the moon cameras. He said, we went to the moon. And this is intel I'd gotten from others from years ago who'd been researching it. And then I got other direct sources when I went public with this, when he went public. He said, we went to the moon. He said, but the Van Allen radiation belt was frying all the film, and they needed for PR and for public relations information, they needed to show people some cool colored photos. There were basically other spacecraft on the moon. We have more advanced spacecraft, a more advanced technological system than what the public's told, and that's basically all he would say. And